enough up above it that they catch it again. No, that's the problem. I know, do you have any idea where the big FAA facility is down there, NorCal Proton? You go down Sunrise to Douglas.
Okay.
Okay, well, I worked there for the last 5 years. I worked for the FAA, and so I commuted across town.
There's
I'm
Dill
not here.
and Steve Haywood.
The truck or
Big low boy trailers, like either 9-axle or 11-axle.
Couple of them drove up on their own, right?
One.
But correct me
The
if I'm
60?
wrong. I'm trying to remember the exact figures.
Right.
Isn't like an M60 in the 90 to 100,000 pound range? That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
They come up very slowly, and on some of their bigger ones actually have a rear steering trailer dolly, and they can steer it on the windy road and lock it in for highway driving.
Yeah.
But very slowly, and we go up like a quarter-mile increments and block the road so people don't come around the corner and see this big trailer and think in the middle of the road.
Yeah, and like I said, what you said basically. Let's start from the beginning. Water tank and a tank is the same, has the same meaning. And if you look on the wall, you'll see some of the in that frame over there, some of the early tanks. The British tanks were huge. They were new Soviet engineers didn't really know what they were doing. So they said, well, the Germans are forbidden to build tanks, but they used to kind of know this stuff. So in 1927, even before Hitler came to power in the Soviet Union, and obviously reconnaissance tanks were light, small tanks that would go in front of everybody and try to find stuff. So that theory didn't really work out in the end because, like all other theories where initial versions of a tank had about an inch of armor on it. The last version had about over 3 inches of armor. So you would, remember how I told you that in 1939 America only had about 200 tanks. Well, by 1945 they produced over 100,000 armored vehicles. So they were able to, from about 1940 until 1942, they were able to ramp up production so fast that they were producing over 20,000 armored vehicles.
Ladder because it always lights the first time when it's hit. To try and counteract some of the burning issues, which were in part to propellant fires. You have ammunition, these things are full of ammo. When you get a round penetrating, it's going to usually burst the powder casing. All that black powder gets spread over there and ignites like that, hatches blow off.
From the Sherman, for example, you would see would be white tracks. It had a diesel engine, a powerful 500 horsepower diesel engine. So the reason why the diesel is preferred in tanks is it burns less. Think about armaments, and professionals think about logistics, and that's where the Soviets were really poor at. Because one of the examples I always like to give in the initial stages of the war in July 1941, when the Germans were breaking through different lines, one of the Soviet armored divisions had about 200 tanks at the beginning of the war. And the High Command ordered it, advance 50 kilometers.
Kind of overkill, kind of overbuilding. If you look at the size-wise, Panther comes in about 45 tons.
Yeah, this was about 32.
32, yeah, thereabouts. Much heavier armor. The influence of the T-34 is apparent in the slope armor because the Germans learned their lesson from that. All the Germans were rushed into service because Hitler wanted them ready for the big offensive. Initially, the offensive was supposed to take place in May, but his generals told him they weren't going to be ready. So Panther comes in, has this long-barreled 75 now. So you see the Sherman 75, then the one on the Panzer IV. Now you've got one that's even longer. This thing has a muzzle velocity of about 3,000 feet per second. So it'll penetrate with its standard armor piercing round, probably about 5.5, 6 inches of armor at about 1,000 meters.
On the tank, big heavy tank takes the recoil. On this thing, there is nothing to take recoil on. So when you shot it, it actually jumped. Yep.
See him on TV.
Yeah.
Good.
Ignore all the other smoke and dang. It's that little plasma.
Yeah, it's actually the first people to came up with it was the Germans, and they used it in their city fighting. And very often, like during the Battle of Berlin, Soviets lost a huge number of tanks because there was actually an engine display. For the engines, the general rule of thumb: the light green is British, the red is Russian, the olive drab is American, and like the dark green is the German. Everybody had their own favorite colors. So here you can see how in just basically in just 6 years how the ammo progressed. So this is what all the countries started the war with. This was the main ammo for the main anti-tank guns. So 37 to 45 millimeter. Towards the end of the war, this is what they were shooting at each other. Yeah, so that's how fast everything progresses in just 6 years. And this is really what you needed to do to kill a tank. And you want to do the table?
Okay, so Vlad was showing you the earlier types of armor-piercing weapons around. Nowadays, you have, like on the Abrams and the M60s, and everybody else uses basically this. It's called a Sabo round, just a dart.
It's basically, it's extremely cheap. You know, you could, it's just a little grenade. You could have, the beauty of it is that it's just a tube, so you can actually stick any type of a warhead on it. So they actually, right now, even though the basic design is probably 60 years old, they're now producing the advanced warheads to, you know, to use turret. So it only had one hatch for 3 people. So you would have the loader would be over there, the gunner would be over here, and the commander would be either, here. So he had 2 seats. This one for when the hatch was closed, and this one would be when he was looking out of the hatch. And you can see, and the ammo would be all around. So you can.
They had 26 armor divisions, but even then, most of their artillery was still towed by truck during the armor divisions. In all the infantry divisions, the artillery was still pretty much towed by horse. You still had actually horse-mounted cavalry units for scouting, that sort of combo. It was designed for their airborne units and their mountain troops to give them some sort of prime mover and supply hauler. It's air portable. It could go pretty much anywhere. You got your driver here. You could have a couple guys, sitting in the back. You could tow a little supply trailer, and it could be used to tow light anti-aircraft guns, light anti-tank guns. The Dirty Dozen, the end of the Dirty Dozen. This is your escape vehicle. This is the actual one from the Dirty Dozen. The Foundation in the past never rented out vehicles for movies because Jacques didn't need the money. And plus, the movie studios have a habit of really trashing vehicles. British wanted them too to use for occupational authority. So this vehicle here actually is running with like a 54 or 56 bug engine. They couldn't get the right one. So if we go on to some more, this is another Volkswagen. This is called a Schwimmwagen. It looks like a boat because it's amphibious. You look at the back of it.
It's a Scud. That's what it's what the Iraqis would fire at the coalition troops during both Gulf Wars. It's a short-range ballistic missile. Routes go all the way to the V2, to the German V2. The Russians produced. This is another interesting piece. That's a Soviet nuclear cannon. It's an 8-inch gun that could fire to the range of 47 kilometers. And 8 inches is because that's the smallest nuclear round.
To keep up with demands, they had to have other companies build them, so International Harvester built some as well, and they were propelled by International Harvester. After World War
At least 2 or 3 of them added. In this case, they had 6. The main reason for that is it's 1970s anti-tank.
behind him, one on either side, and then the commander's in the very back where the 50 cal is. In the front is the driver. So this is normally the M48. You can see if you think back to the Israeli tank back there with the round front. This is really just a big M48. It's lengthened by about 1 or 2 road wheels.
Groups of thought. So one group of thought is heavy armament versus no armament, and another one is wheels versus tracks. So the group of thought of armament versus no armament is your reconnaissance groups are not really supposed to fight the enemy. They're supposed to find. Yeah. So it was despite how much it scared the Allies, it was not considered a great success. And it actually, you know how Russians never throw away anything. This was retired out of the Russian reserves faster than the earlier GS-2 tank.
Upgraded, we have an Centurion up there, and we can actually talk about the American M60. The British developed a 105mm cannon designated the L-70, and that was after they viewed when the Hungarian uprising in 76, the Soviets were using their T-54s and T-55, along with Stalin's and other vehicles. The British Embassy managed to get measurements off of one of the T-54-55s. They either got them from Hungarian insurgents, from one that was knocked out, or they did it themselves. And the 55 uses a 100mm gun. The standard at the time for the Americans was a 90, and the British was an 83mm called a 20 pounder. 1,500 rounds a minute. No radar guidance, nothing. It was basically the sergeants. They were used for airfield defense, perimeter defense. During the Korean War, initially they were used also at the beginning to protect the airfields like the Kimpo and then Kusan. But once again, once the UN troops had air superiority, these became a primary ground combat vehicle against the human wave tactics. The half-tracks themselves, for the most part, were withdrawn from service, active service, by 57. Some National Guard units still had them into the 60s.
After World War II, the Germans were forbidden to build tanks.
For the most part, were withdrawn from